Hello, everybody, and welcome to Free UFC Bet Picks. Thanks for tuning into our show today. We are going to be breaking down UFC Vegas 15. Was Blades versus Lewis. Now it is Smith versus Clark. I'm going to start with the prelims and just work our way up. So getting right into it here, it is a bantamweight bout between Nate Maness and Luke Sanders. Maness is 12-1. He's got a little bit of a height advantage here, 5'10" to Sanders 5'6", but their reach is about the same, within an inch of each other. Maness has got a record of 1-0 in the UFC. He won his UFC debut earlier this year. Going up against Sanders with a record of 13-3. Sanders is 3-3 in the UFC. He is the favorite in this fight. Odds have him at -150 and Maness the underdog at +120. What are your predictions for this one?
It's a good fight. It's one of the tougher ones to pick. Luke Sanders has been around the UFC for a long time, a good fighter. His last fight was against Renan Barão, former champ, and he knocked out Renan Barão. And Renan Barão's been losing, but Renan Barão's been fighting really good fighters and going to decision. Luke Sanders is the only one in this 5 or 6 fight stretch that finished Barão. So it's a really good win. Sanders has always been good, but showed some kind of questionable fight IQ. He be beaten Yuri Alcantara and then decides to get into an unnecessary leg lock game and, ends up getting leg locked. He strikes with, Andre Sukumtoth when he really shouldn't have. He should have just been grappling him and gets knocked out by Sukumtoth. It's just one of his worst losses. But when he looks good, he looks really, really good. Maness seems to have a huge height advantage here, but at the stare downs today, the height differential wasn't that bad. They both weighed in right at 140, 139 and a half. The size wasn't as pronounced as we thought it was going to be for Maness. Maness is really talented. He's got, knockout power. If you go for a single leg on him, he's great in those transitions. He kind of just has an extra limb in those situations. When you got both arms wrapped around his leg, he uses his extra limb to start just transitioning on you, while the takedown's still happening, and you don't land in half guard like you think. You land and he's getting your back. Just really good in those kind of scrambles and transitions. Yeah. Well-rounded guy. There's kind of a narrative going around. In his last fight, he beat Johnny Munoz Jr. Johnny Munoz kept low-blowing him. 3 really blatant ones. Lost a point, and people are saying that Maness only won because of that lost point, but that doesn't really make sense unless they were going to draw until that last point. Maness won 29-27 on all 3 cards, so he was going to win 29-28. So, that was there's just this narrative going around that he needed those points to win, which just mathematically doesn't make sense. Before that, he beat Kellen Van Camp, round 1 KO. Maness is really good. Sanders, he looked really good at weigh-ins. They both did. Both had good energy. But I think, just Sanders has fought much better competition and has a little bit clearer path to victory with the cage control that he likes to do. He just kind of holds guys against the cage, but it's powerful striking and knees up there. He does a great job of transitioning between striking and grappling, whether it's against the cage or in the middle of the octagon. If it's against the cage and he's holding you up, then boom, he's just exploding on you. In the middle, if he's going for a takedown or some type of tie collar and then you break, he's ending it with knees, whether to the body or if he's got a clinch, then he'll bring him up high. So, Sanders is just kind of really great in all areas. They both are. It's a great fight. Got Sanders. Got Sanders in some of the longest, cheapest parlays. Got Sanders in some of those, but it's a close fight.
Yeah, I've got him in a short parlay of just a couple other favorites from tonight's card. But what about fantasy? You going to be picking these guys up? We've got Sanders at 8,400 and Maness at 7,800.
They both have pretty high volume, but I don't really expect to finish here. Expect kind of it could go to decision, so it could be a high score for the winner. But overall, there's not that many fights on here to pick. So if you have to, put one of these guys in based on the salary that you got available, it's not terrible. Maness being the cheaper one. But I think whoever wins here is probably winning the decision. So, if you have to, Maness is pretty good value at only 7,800. but you're typically hoping for somebody that's going to finish.
Right. All right, let's move on to our next fight here. It is a bantamweight bout between Sue Maderji and Malcolm Gordon. Maderji is 12-4. He's got a small height and reach advantage here. He's got an inch of height and a 2-inch reach on Gordon. Malcolm Gordon with a record of 12-4, and he is 0-1 in the UFC, whereas Maderji is 1-1 in the UFC. Maderji the favorite here at -345, and Gordon the underdog at +260. Should be a good fight here. What are you thinking?
Yeah, I think it will be a better fight than the line would indicate. Maderji is one of the biggest favorites on the card. Maderji's really good. He's young, and he keeps taking about a year off between fights, and he keeps showing a lot of improvement between those fights. He has been training with American Top Team, training with Pietrian, and training in Dagestan, training his wrestling. And so, he's a great striker. The question here is, can he stay on his feet against Gordon, who's a, really great grappler. It's funny because Gordon started out back in the day as a striker who had no ground game, and then that's now, kind of all he has in his last fight against Amir Abazi. Abazi's a decent striker, but not, I think Maderji is a much better striker than Abazi. Abazi was backing him up, hurting him on the feet, ends up taking him down. Malcolm Gordon did a great job, got a transition and got on top, but then immediately gets triangled. So it was just not a great performance by Gordon, but even in that terrible, really lackluster performance in all areas, he still got a transition on the bottom and got on top, got a sweep. So Maderji's really got to stay off the ground here. Malcolm Gordon looked shredded at the weigh-ins today, more shredded than I've ever seen him. Maderji looked great as well, but he always comes in on weight, and looking good. We got Maderji in a lot of parlays. He's one of the safer parlay, options on this card, especially since Blade fell out. But this is going to be a really, really close fight. Malcolm Gordon by sub, it's his main path to victory, but it's kind of his only chance. So if you're going with, Malcolm Gordon, I think go ahead and choose that method bet. Maderji's been finished by submissions before. He has shown a lot of improvement there, so it should be a better fight than the line would indicate. Gordon looked kind of mean and just really ready at the stare downs. Gordon does get hurt though. Even in his last win against Yoni Sherbatov, he was hurt. In the striking, he kind of just has nothing for you there in the striking. And when the combos start coming, and especially once a punch or two lands, he gets really flat-footed. He doesn't get out of there, with good head movement and good footwork. He just shells up. His head stays still. His feet are planted in the sand, and he just kind of, shells up, covers up, and waits for it to end. And Maderji is just really technical, really tactical. Not going to gas himself out when he does hurt Gordon. He's going to be patient and put it on him. And so Maderji should have a pretty easy day here. But Gordon looked better than ever, and he's got a obvious path to victory with the grappling.
Yeah. And it seems like this will probably not go to decision. We've got Maderji at 9,100, pretty pricey on fantasy, and Gordon at 7,100. Got either of these guys in your fantasy?
I think they're both good options for fantasy. Yeah. Like you said, they high probability for a finish. Maderji should land a lot of his significant strikes if the fight goes his way. Either he's going to style on Malcolm for 15 minutes or he's going to knock him out. And for Gordon, for him to win, like we said, it's likely by submission. So I think they're both good plays. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next one here. It is a women's bantamweight between Rachel Ostovich and Gina Mazzani. Ostovich with a record of 4-5. She's got a slight height and reach disadvantage to Mazzani. She is 0-1 in the UFC, going up against Mazzani, who is also 0-1 in the UFC. Total record of 6-4. Like I said, she does have a slight advantage. She's got 3 inches of height on Ostovich and actually a 5.5-inch reach on her, so she's got quite a bit of an advantage there. She is the favorite here, -200, and Ostovich the underdog at +160. So what are you thinking about this one?
It's a tough one. There's a lot of unknowns. Ostovich hasn't fought in a while. Her Instagram is just her kind of on the beach and stuff. As we know, she doesn't show a lot of what she's training. We know she does train more than her social media would indicate, but You don't hear anything about it. You don't see anything about it. We hear a lot about Gina Mazzani's training. You know, she used to train at Extreme Couture. Now she switched to Glory MMA, where a lot of folks are doing really good stuff. And you know, all we've heard is that she's just training super hard for this fight. She looked shredded. She looked really confident at weigh-ins. You know, Ostovich, looked solid at the weigh-ins too, but she always does. She's always in great shape. It's just kind of, there's a lot of unknowns. You know, Ostovich does have really good transitions and scrambles, and, you know, she is sneaky on the ground. She doesn't have good wrestling offense, so, you know, if Mazzani wants to keep it standing, she definitely can. But, you know, Ostovich is better than her record, and, you know, she's sub 500, we know. You know, she's undersized here, we know, but, you know, she is sneaky. I think that's the best way to put it, you know, specifically with the ground game. You know, Mazzani should have a pretty easy day here, I think, though. You know, not really much of a path to victory for Rachel Ostovich unless she submits her, like I'm describing. Right. I think Mazzani is going to be really well prepared for that, and Mazzani should be safe here.
And how about fantasy? We've got Ostovich at 7,600 and Mazzani at 8,600.
You know, they've both had some finishes. They both get kind of, if you look at their resume recently, it looks like they're a finish or get finished style. And I think that's kind of true for Ostovich, but for Mazzani, you know, she fought Julia Avila, and, you know, Avila caught her with a really nice knee and, you know, then some hands. You know, it was a nice job by Avila. Before that, Mazzani beat Valerie Barney, but Valerie Barney is like way past her prime, you know, just leave it at that. And, you know, so I think these finishes that we see on their records are a little bit like overstated and misleading. I could see this fight going to the over. I could see it going to decision. You know, I think it's kind of a pass for both. You know, like I said, you know, Ostovich has a chance of submitting her, and but I think, you know, 7,600, that's a little, because this line is kind of a pick'em. So when they're making these prices, they kind of have to balance like what's their upside of finishing in a high scoring fashion versus just like what are the odds of them winning, period. Right. And I think both of these fighters are just overpriced, you know, in my opinion, for their ability to score high. You know, Mazzani's not extremely high volume in the striking or anything. She's pretty, you know, just she throws with some power, but it's not about high volume. I expect a low scoring fight here. I'd pass in both ways.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next one here. It is the prelim headliner, a bantamweight bout between Martin Day and Anderson Dos Santos. Martin Day with a record of 8-4. He's got a slight height advantage here, actually 5 inches on Dos Santos, but they do have the same 70-inch reach. Day has a record of 0-2 in the UFC. Going up against Anderson Dos Santos, he's got a record of 20-8 and 0-2 in the UFC as well. He is the underdog in this fight at plus 135. Day is the favorite at minus 167. What are you thinking about this one?
This is a tough one. Martin Day has a lot of potential. He's a good technical striker, but he kind of gets sucked into brawls. He ends up, you know, getting into these firefights with guys that he really shouldn't, and that's when he's lost. You know, Anderson Dos Santos keeps struggling with wrestlers, but that's not really what Day wants to do here. Day's supposed to be much bigger, but at the stare downs, the size discrepancy was not that big. And Martin Day had not trouble making weight, but he was one of the last guys to make weight. He had a little bit of trouble balancing on the scale. You know, Dos Santos was one of the first guys to make weight and weigh in. So, you know, previously, if Day had a better weigh-ins, I think he should have a very big edge in the striking here. He's been taken down before, but Dos Santos isn't really the best offensive grappler. I would see this fight, and I still pretty much do. I think, you know, it's going to be a stand-up affair, and Day should have a pretty big edge there, like I said. But the weigh-ins made it a little bit concerning. You know, all the bets have placed after the weigh-ins have kind of left Martin Day out of them. Whereas, you know, I wish I was able to put him in there because, you know, at minus 167 or that, you know, that area, it's really attractive odds for, you know, for somebody you have a lot of confidence in, that, you know, you put them in a parlay and it's really good, you know, does really good things to the odds. So I think it's a pass. I still am struggling with the pick. What are their DraftKings prices?
DraftKings price, we've got Day at 8,800 and Dos Santos at 7,400.
I still will go with Day. I think that's too heavy of a price for him. Dos Santos does leave his head up and kind of just has bad defensive striking. I still think, I still think it's going to be a stand-up affair, that Martin Day should definitely have the edge there. But I don't see him knocking out Dos Santos necessarily. Dos Santos at 7,400, that's decent value. If he can get this fight to the ground, he should have a big edge there. So I think Dos Santos is a better DFS play, but the pick is Day.
Yeah.
And just for bets or parlays, I think it's pretty much a pass, because Day did have trouble making weight, didn't look happy, didn't look to be in a good mood, had trouble balancing, getting on the scale.
Yeah.
And Dos Santos looked really ready and wasn't as short as he was supposed to be in this matchup.
Right. All right, let's move on to our main card here. Starting it off, we've got a lightweight bout between Kai Kamaka and Jonathan Pierce. Kamaka has a record of 8-2 and coming off of a 6-fight win streak. He's 5'7", 69-inch reach, and he won his UFC debut earlier this year against Tony Kelly, making him 1-0 in the UFC. And he's going up against Jonathan Pierce, a record of 9-4. He is 6 feet with a 71-inch reach, so he's got a slight height and reach advantage there. He is 0-1 in the UFC, and actually that was his first loss that ruined a 5-fight win streak. Or sorry, not his first loss, but that recent loss ruined a 5-fight win streak that he had going in his UFC debut. He is the underdog in this fight at plus 260, and Kamaka the favorite at minus 345. This was moved up from the prelims. It was like the first fight on the prelim card and got moved up to the main card. So what are you thinking about this one?
I think this one's closer than the line indicates. Kamaka, I literally don't have Kamaka in a single parlay, and I've got like tons of like 20 parlays or something, some long, some short, some with methods, some straight, right? Like, some with futures, some with Connor in them, some with Davison at minus 255, like a lot of different parlays. And Kamaka's not in a single one, because I think this line is just wildly wide. Joe Lozon was on a losing streak, took a year and a half off, comes in and knocks out Jonathan Pierce in the first round. So I get why people are fading Jonathan Pierce, but before that, Pierce had shown fine durability. Like you said, he was on a win streak and like a lot of finishes. He was on a finish streak coming in. He's got a huge edge here, the size and reach, like you said. He looked great at the weigh-ins. Kamaka is really good, though. Really, really good. Kamaka does a great job of striking, throws different kicks, mixes up the striking, and then mixes in the grappling with that. Does a great job of, throwing some heavy punches and then going for a single leg. He does it against the cage and in the middle of the octagon, and he's just really good fight IQ, I think, out of Kamaka. He's never knocked anybody out, and so people think he has no knockout power, but I don't think that's the case. Like sometimes it's fluky, right? Like you could have the same punch land 10 times and 9 of them do nothing, and 1 of them knock the guy out cold, right? It's just knockouts are a weird thing. I think he's got more power than his resume would indicate. But, just the size and reach here, the fact that just the recency bias that's made this line so incredibly wide. I think there's great value on Jonathan Pierce, actually. So it's, it is tough. It's pretty much a pass. I'm tempted to just literally pick Jonathan Pierce straight up, but, I'm not that confident. Otherwise, I would be betting on him. And so, and I'm not. So, I guess the pick is Kamaka, but it's just a pass all day long in terms of betting.
Yeah. A pass in fantasy as well, or Pierce is only 7,000 and Kamaka is 9,200.
Yeah, and I think Kamaka does score, does have a lot of volume, has a nice pace, but at that price, you really need him to get that finish. Or get a ton of takedowns, which he's not known for. He only does them when it presents itself. Like I said, I think he has great timing with his takedowns. Jonathan Pierce, $7,000. I think that's amazing value. Yeah.
All right. Let's move on to our next one here. It is a women's bantamweight between Ashley Evans-Smith and Norma Dumont. Ashley Evans Smith has a record of 6-4 and 3-4 in the UFC, going up against Dumont with a record of 4-1. Not any significant height or reach advantage here. And she is 0-1 in the UFC. She is the underdog in this fight at +110, and Smith is the favorite, -137. What are you thinking about this one?
This is a really interesting one. This had some of the most line movement we had all week. So Dumont started out as like a -160, and then the line, money's just been pouring in on Ashley, and now she's the favorite, like you said. Dumont, that loss that you talked about was against Megan Anderson, who's fighting Amanda Nunes next year. Megan Anderson's a huge 145er, a real 145er, and Dumont's truly not. She's she should be fighting down at 135. Ashley Evans Smith is a professional. She's had a lot of really good fights in the UFC. She surrounds herself with all fighters, but she hasn't fought in a year and a half. Ashley did look taller, like you said, there's not a big height advantage here. It's supposed to be 1 inch. Yeah, it looked bigger than that. Ashley looked really tall at stare downs, and she looked really mean, really ready. Dumont came in like 4.5 pounds heavy, looked unhappy. And that made me really, really confident in Ashley. The thing is, Dumont is very heavily muscled. She's got guns. She got Megan Anderson down. Her fights before that Megan Anderson fight were all finishes against absolute nobodies. Against the Megan Anderson fight, she got her down. But Anderson got back up, and the hands were just too much for her. Megan's got great power. But yeah, the fights that Norma was winning before that were against not very good fighters. I think she can get Ashley down round 1, and I think Ashley's going to win round 2 and 3. So it's a live betting opportunity, but I think it's just really good value on Ashley still. I wish I got Ashley as an underdog, but if a lot of times the bookies know something we don't know, and what they might have known is just that she's shredded. She's been training her wrestling, and she's going to come in here and take Ashley down 3 rounds in a row. Maybe that's what they thought was going to happen. The betting public just keeps pouring it in on Ashley because we look at her resume, because we know her, and because the Megan Anderson loss looks worse than it is, maybe, Megan Anderson would surely beat Ashley Evans Smith too, right? So, but the money's just been pouring in on Ashley. It started to feel like the value is really on Dumont again. Again, these bookies don't get it wrong very often. And it was going to wait to the last second until as much money poured in on Ashley as possible and then pick Dumont. But Dumont looked terrible at weigh-ins, barely made weight, and she tried making weight. You could tell, she was drawn out. She was lethargic. She had to get, within that 5-pound grace period to not have the fight canceled. Right. And she barely did. So I think Ashley is really going to have that cardio advantage, the striking edge, and she'll be able to get up when she, if and when she does get taken down. She's not going to get finished or ground and pounded or submitted. Ashley's really well-rounded. Yeah. So got Ashley winning the decision. The over 2.5 here is like -280. Everyone's expecting this to go to decision. I think that very much favors Ashley. And again, good.
I got that in a couple parlays.
Ashley?
Or the over 2.5.
I think that's a
very
lock.
Safe. Yeah,
that's good. I like that. I think it's a live betting opportunity. If Dumont comes out and wins round 1, and all of a sudden Ashley is like a +250 underdog going into round 2, I think that's good value because I don't think Dumont can do that for more than 7 minutes.
Yeah. And as far as fantasy, probably not the best pickups just because it probably will go to decision. But we've got Evan Smith at 8,300 and Dumont at 7,900. I think especially at those prices.
Yeah, you're right. The thing, Ashley, when in her fights that have gone to decision, she lands like 75 significant strikes and throws like 200. She's very high volume. But if she's going to be fighting off the takedown for at least half this fight, you don't have that opportunity. So normally I think Ashley's a decent DFS play, but probably not here. You're right.
Okay. All right, let's move on to our next one here. We've got a featherweight bout between Bill Algeo and Spark Carlisle. Algeo has a record of 13-5. He's got a slight height and reach advantage here. He is 6 feet to Carlisle's 5'8", and he has a 73.5-inch reach to Carlisle's 71-inch. Algio's got a record of 0-1 in the UFC, going up against Carlisle with a record of 9-2, who is 1-1 in the UFC. Carlisle is the favorite in this fight, -177, and Algio the underdog at +140. What are you thinking about this one?
This is a tough one too. There's a lot of really good close fights on this card, and there's a lot of like size discrepancies, and this is one of them. Bill is so tall. Bill weighed in right after Kai Kamaka, so Bill just looked gigantic on the scales. Spike looked really happy, confident, extra flex, smiling, and looked great at weigh-ins. At stare down, they both had good energy. It was good way. Spike wore a mask. But they both look really ready. I think this is going to be a very intense fight. Spike has big power. He likes big powerful takedowns. He's just super strong. He's not the most technical fighter. Billy Quarantillo we're big on. He was able to get Spike's back, and you think he's going to choke Spike out because Quarantillo's got great rear naked choke, great grappling, and Spike would just get 2-on-1, just get wrist control and just kind of power out. He was getting Billy down, and Billy's got off his back, and Spike did a nice job of nullifying the submissions there. Spike showed a good fight against Billy Quarantillo, and before that he's just starching people, explosive. But you thought he's kind of first round knockout or bust. I think he showed against Billy Quarantillo that he's not first round knockout or bust. But Bill's got the big height and reach, like you said. Bill's last fight against Ricardo Lamas was a good fight. Lamas finishes everybody. It was like his retirement fight. But Bill Algio showed some really good things there. He kept getting taken down, but he kept standing back up. He had good striking. He was on short notice there. But the striking was really impressive there. He was just scoring a lot. Lamas needed to get it down nonstop, and he was able to do so. He was able to win the fight. So I think that's Spike's path to victory here. People think that Spike's gonna just knock him out. I think he's got to kind of lay and pray here. I think Bill Algio should have the striking edge at distance, but that if Spike wants to make it dirty and keep it greasy and just keep chain wrestling, keep him up against the cage, be safe when he's on top, Spike should have the edge in that wrestling area. So it's a close fight. The line was closer. Money's been coming in on Spike. It almost getting to the point where I think there's value on Algio at +140 or so. But I think Spike, with his strength, his improving cardio, his improving fight IQ, back in the day he used to make some really kind of bad decisions, just end up on bottom. He showed bad cardio back in the day. Those things are improving. He's getting better there. Again, the Quarantillo fight was pretty solid as far as losses go.
Yeah.
I got Spike. Definitely haven't bet on either one of ththese guys at all.
Right. What about fantasy? We've got Algio at 7,300 and Carlisle at 8,900.
I think Bill at 7,300, that's good value as far as punts go. He could win flat out. Yeah. That's wildly wide in terms of their pricing. As far when you look at the money line, it's not that wide.
Yeah.
And again, Algio puts on a lot of volume when he's able to keep it in the stand up. For 8,900 for Spike, I don't see him just going in a first round knocking out Algio like he does these lower level fighters. I see him winning a decision if he wins, which I think he's gonna. I think he's gonna win a decision. So I'd pass on Spike, and Bill Algio. That's great DFS value.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to our next fight here. It is a heavyweight bout between Josh Parisian and Parker Porter. Parisian is 13-3. This will be his UFC debut after a win in the Contender Series. Parker Porter's got a record of 10-6. He is 0-1 in the UFC. Parisian's got a slight height and reach advantage here. He's got 4 inches on Porter and a 4-inch reach on Porter. He's the favorite here at -200. Porter the underdog at +160. What are you thinking about this fight?
This one's such a tough one. Parisian looks like he should just style on him. People get a little mesmerized with his spinning back fist and his unorthodox striking. It's been pretty effective. Back in the day when he was on Contender Series a couple years ago, he landed a spinning back fist and then finished the guy. This most recent time he won with mounted punches, but Chad Johnson weighs 215 pounds. Like, he should not even be fighting a heavyweight. Before that, he knocks out Marcus Maulding He literally weighs 169. He's a welterweight. Before that, he beats Matunga Jakasa. He's a real heavyweight, but at that time he was 3-1 against four guys who they had 6 combined fights. He'd fought 4 guys. Those 4 guys had 6 combined fights, and they were 2-4 in those combined fights. A couple guys that were 0-0, one guy that was 0-1, and one guy that was like 1-3 or something like that. Before it's like 4 fights ago where you find that he fought an actual heavyweight, Charles Brown.
Right.
But he's 45. He was 4-4 when he fought him. Now he's 4-7. Like, he has fought nobody.
Yeah.
The only good win he has, truly, is against Greg Robatello, the spinning back fist to mounted punches one that I was describing from a couple years ago.
Yeah.
He has fought a lot in that 2-year span. You know, I like that he's active, and he kind of looks like he's showing improvement on paper, but he's really not. These guys should not even be fighting in his weight class at most times. His body shows no improvement. He looked like maybe flabbier than usual today, whereas Porter came in looking leaner, much trimmer than normal today. Porter looked terrible in the Dawkins fight, body-wise, just like, you know, the eye test. He had to cut like 20 pounds to make the 265 limit against Dawkins. And Dawkins just styled on him. But now, you know, Dawkins knocks out Nascimento, and we're like, oh, we all have a very high opinion of both Dawkins brothers now, right? Well, you know, so that loss to Dawkins looks a little better. Parker was coming in on super short notice, had a ton of weight to cut, and he did not look good. He told James Lynch, you know, we listened to the interview with James Lynch. Great. We love James Lynch. Great interviews and great picks and stuff. He told James Lynch that he had a really good camp for this fight, and you could see it at the weigh-ins and the stare downs. The problem is, you know, Parker, he likes to throw a leg kick. He has decent striking, but he doesn't want to strike with Parisian here. But the problem is he couldn't even push. Like, you would think, okay, yeah, maybe he doesn't have great cardio against Dawkins, but he should have the wrestling edge. He couldn't push Dawkins up against the cage when he wanted to. Dawkins hurt him in the dirty boxing in the middle of the octagon, and, you know, Porter was hurt, wanted to push him up against the cage, couldn't. You know, Dawkins just spun him right around and held him against the cage. And Dawkins was, like, you know, way undersized in that fight. Dawkins, after that fight, lost 20 pounds. He fought Nascimento at like 225. Like, Dawkins is just way smaller than Porter, and he was pushing Porter around the octagon, right? The thing is, believe it or not, you know, people look at Parker Porter, they call him Porker. They think he doesn't have good cardio. I think he's going to have the cardio edge here. I think this is another live betting opportunity. If Parisian wins round 1, but it looks like he's gassing a little bit because he's throwing a bunch of spinning stuff, I think Porter can absolutely outmuscle him, you know, round 2 and round 3. So I think Porter's got good value at, you know, plus 200 or whatever he is, and maybe not that quite. I've seen Parisian as wide as like minus 230. Yeah. You know, so I think this is just such a tough fight. You know, Parisian's just incredibly overrated. That's what I'll say. I kind of think it's a pass, and there's some value on Porter.
Yeah. And what are you thinking fantasy-wise? We've got Porter at 7,200, Parisian at 9,000.
You know, I think that is pricey for Parisian. You know, that's an indication of that wide line. They are heavyweights. You want high exposure to heavyweights. They have a high finish probability. Everyone's expecting this fight to be into the first round. I kind of disagree, and I know you do too. You know, we talked about it, and so I kind of think it's a pass for Parisian at 9,000. He's not going to knock Porter out first round. You know, Porter just got knocked out first round, yeah, but it's Chris Dawkins. Parisian finishes these guys, yeah, but they're literally welterweights and light heavyweights.
I've even got the over 1.5 in one of my parlays. It's at plus 112.
Wow. Yeah, I think that 7.5 minutes is gonna fly by.
Yeah.
I think plus money on the over 1.5 here looks really, 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 really good.
Yeah.
So nice job there. Yeah, that's so for $9,000 for, you know, I don't think Parisian's good value. $7,200 on Porter, I think is good value. And I like the over 1.5. You could bet on that straight up, or include that with, you know, 1 or 2 people you feel super confident about. Maybe a Maderji, maybe one of the guys we got coming up here.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on to our next one here. It is a welterweight bout between Miguel Baeza and Takashi Sato. Baeza has a record of 9-0. He is 2-0 in the UFC, both of those by knockout. Going up against Sato, who is 16-3. He is 2-1 in the UFC. Both of his wins in the UFC by knockout. Baeza's got a slight height and reach advantage here. Actually, more than a slight one. He's got 4 inches of height on him, but just a small reach advantage, 1.5-inch reach advantage. Baeza is the favorite here, -162, and Sato the underdog at +130. Another close line. What are you thinking here?
I think Baeza's going to win. I think this is great value on him. There's a little bit of like narrative going around that Baeza's chinny because Matt Brown hurt him. Well, Matt Brown hurts everybody for one thing. And after Matt Brown had him hurt, he landed a really tough elbow on him. Like we all remember Matt Brown knocking Diego Sanchez out with one of those elbows flat. Baeza hurt, took that elbow and just walked right through it. Ended up finishing Matt Brown. Earlier in his career, he fought Arun dropped him. He popped right back up, threw a couple hooks, and knocked out Arun cold. Just literally 3 seconds after he was on his knee, one hand and one knee after getting dropped. So I think Baeza's got a really good durability. Even when he gets clipped with a punch right on the button, he reacts really well to it, in my opinion. So I got no trouble with Baeza's chin. People say he backs up too straight. And that that kind of feeds into Sato's strength, which is walking people down and just landing powerful punches. But I think that's overstated. Baeza's got great footwork, great movement. He loves to throw the calf kick, which you won't be able to do as much against this fight as Sato's a southpaw. But we've seen Baeza throw just inside leg kicks, kind of the oblique kicks. Or kicks to the oblique, not the oblique kick that we imagine like Conor and John Jones throwing. But he's got great diverse kicking game, side kicks, teeps. Just really exciting, clean, technical fighter. He's got the edge in the reach. He's got cardio. I'm really confident on Baeza here.
Yeah.
Sato is nice. He's a good fighter, strong power. The Jason Witt knockout, is a little weird. Jason Witt was coming in on short notice. Jason Witt had his hands out. He was kind of pawing out, trying to taunt a little bit. And Sato was backing up, and then just exploded with a really nice 1-2, and that straight left, came right up the pipe, and just put Witt down. So it was a great job by Sato, but it was just a really poor job by Witt. I don't think there's a whole lot you could take out of that knockout that's relevant, in this fight. So, I think, I think this line could be wider. I think Baeza's really, really, really solid, future contender. Sato is a good fighter. Baeza was one of the first guys to weigh in today. Sato was one of the later guys to weigh in today. You could tell it took him a little longer to make weight, but he looked fine. He didn't have any trouble balancing, or he wasn't lethargic or anything. But he just wasn't as shredded as Baeza, which he never is. So it was kind of run of the mill for the weigh-ins. But Sato he was one of the later weighers in.
Yeah.
Baeza, on the other hand, had no qualms, no problems at all. Looked great.
Yeah. And fantasy, we've got Baeza at 8,700 and Sato at 7,500.
So I really like Baeza, but I think he's a pretty low volume striker. He doesn't throw a ton of combos. He throws combos, but it's just lower volume. He's really technical, and just kind of he's just a little technical and tactical and strategic. So I think this fight could go to decision. Both he's got 2 wins in the UFC. They're both knockout, right? But Sato's pretty durable. I think this could go to decision. 8,700. That's close. I don't hate that, but I think the chance that Baeza wins a decision here is pretty likely, and you might be disappointed with that, in your lineup. But I think he's a very safe play. So maybe a better cash play than a GPP play.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to what is now our main event of the fights for UFC Vegas 15. It is a light heavyweight bout between Anthony Smith and Devin Clark. Smith has a record of 33-16. He's 7-5 in the UFC. Devin Clark a record of 12-4, and he is 5-4 in the UFC. Smith has a slight height and reach advantage here. He's got 4 inches of height on Clark and 1 inch reach. He's the favorite in this fight at -139, and Clark the underdog at +110. Again, another close line. What are you thinking on this one?
So we got Clark. Actually, predicted this line movement to be wrong, though. I really thought money was going to continue pouring in on Clark, but people have been putting money on Anthony Smith, and Anthony Smith has gotten more and more of a favorite, and God bless those people. I appreciate that. I disagree with them, but I very much appreciate them.
Yeah.
Same people that were probably betting on Shogun last week. Thank you all very, very much. I think the path to victory here is just too clear. And Devin Clark, he's great. He loves to wrestle, but he's not like... He doesn't go in there with T-Rex arms. He's not going to have trouble reaching Anthony. We know Anthony's got great striking. He does a great job backing up and striking and keeping a lot of pop on his punches. When the distance does get closed, Anthony will grab you in the clinch and throw great knees and elbows. So Anthony normally does a great job kind of controlling the distance. And, when somebody's trying to take him down, that often can help him. He has been getting taken down by everybody, as we know. But Devin Clark does a nice job, kind of like we described with Alexander Romanov. He'll throw something really heavy that gets you to react, and then the distance is closed, and now he's putting you on your butt. He dropped Alexander Rakic twice. Rakic finishes him in the first round. If you look at that on paper, it looks terrible. Devin Clark looked great. Even though, Anthony Smith, I think, went all the way to a decision with, Rakic, he did. I swear to God, Clark losing in the first round looked, it's okay.
All right, keep yawning.
Clark looked better in that loss, the first round loss, than Anthony Smith did in a decision loss, in my opinion. People say that Clark has no cardio, but he had great cardio and chin and durability against Alonzo Minifield. Alonzo Minifield had him hurt. He landed kind of a knuckle in the eye. Clark actually thought it was like an eye poke, but it wasn't. It was a clean punch. Just kind of the knuckle got right in the eye. And Clark was hurt for like a full round, just like survival mode against Alonzo Minifield, who is just a devastating striker. And Clark lasted through the storm and ended up, just really just pouring it on and just, dominating him in the second half of the fight. I think that was a really gutsy performance by Clark. I think that anything that Anthony Smith has for Clark, Minifield put on him in the last fight, and he got through it. Once Anthony Smith gets taken down, he's getting the ground and pound put on him. We all know he doesn't react well. He doesn't give up. He sits in there and takes it too long, but he doesn't keep trying to get up. He just kind of accepts it, and it's not great. So I've been all over Devin Clark all week, and today Anthony Smith had a lot of trouble making weight. He was the last guy to weigh in. He never looks energetic. He never flexes. He never smiles. He literally always just stands on the scale, steps off. His stare downs are always very just calm, and so that he just has his hands to his side. He doesn't even put his hands up in a boxing position for a stare down. He's just really mellow. But today he looked a little off. You could tell he had a little bit of trouble making weight, it seemed like, and he wasn't as shredded as he was. Last time he won was against Alexander Gustafsson in Sweden. Finished Alexander, a great win, but he just didn't look in as good of shape today as he did then. Right. So I think just the wrestling advantage for Devin Clark, the fact that he's not going to have trouble getting his arms around Anthony Smith, I don't see that happening at all. He'll throw something super heavy. He'll strike with Anthony for a little while to get that. But he doesn't go in there. He's not stupid. He's not going to go in there and box. He goes in there against Rakic. First second of the fight, throws an incredibly heavy overhand right, and he's got his arms around Rakic 3 seconds into the fight. I like that. He's not gonna stay at range with Anthony Smith at all. He just will not, and I like that. I think Devin Clark, as the underdog here, is some of the best value that I can remember in a long time. Feel really confident about it. So yeah, just super excited. I got Devin Clark in a lot of parlays. I got Devin Clark inside the distance in parlays. Devin Clark by KO even.
Yeah, that one's plus 650.
Yeah.
I put that one in one of my parlays. I'm a little nervous about it, but that would be a great payout.
Yeah, I think that's there's a more than a 1 in 6 chance that happens for sure.
Yeah.
Especially since it's 5-round fight, that kind of bodes well for Anthony Smith because he's got the experience edge. He's shown great cardio in the past. He's fought 5 rounds before against John Jones, but I think this just gives more and more opportunity for Clark to ground and pound him.
Yeah.
The over 2.5 I think is a good look here. Yeah, I'm really excited about this fight. That, you know, if Anthony Smith can come back and, you know, put on a good performance, people are going to be like, oh, who's Devin Clark? It's going to look unimpressive, but it would be so impressive if Anthony Smith wins this, because Devin Clark is, you know, he's really gonna press the wrestling action.
Yeah. And I think Clark looks like a great pickup in fantasy as well. Only 7,700 and Smith at 8,500.
Yeah, I agree. I think they're actually both, you know, decent. 8,500, because it's a 5-round fight specifically. Like, if this does go more than 15 minutes, it's just free time. You're getting just an edge, you know, by playing these guys. You know, in FanDuel, you get points for defending a takedown. So if, you know, Clark's in there trying to take down Anthony a bunch and Anthony's fighting him off, he gets, I think, 3 points each. You know, in DraftKings, you get points for the transitions. So Anthony Smith might be a slightly better FanDuel play. Devin Clark might be a slightly better DraftKings play. But I think they're both decent. You know, I think Devin Clark's he's cheaper, and I think he's going to win. So absolutely, that 7,700, I'd be all over. But if you like Anthony Smith and you think he's going to win, you know, this is a 25-minute fight. $8,500 isn't the biggest price tag. I don't hate that.
Yeah. All right, I think that is a wrap on the fights for UFC Vegas 15. Anything else you want to add?
Nope. You know, we thought Paul Felder might come in short notice against the Black Beast, but
Right.
didn't happen.
Can't save the day every time, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you for tuning into this video. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, hit that bell so you can get your bell rung every time we release a new video. Yeah, thank you guys for tuning in, and hope you enjoy the fights on Saturday, and we will see you soon.